Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
When disgraced boss Mike Ashley turned up in an inspection of a Sports Direct factory this morning, they frisked him and found a huge wad of cash. Nothing illegal about that, of course, yet somehow we're conditioned to find raw, ready cash a sign of the underhand these days, or at least something a little bit seedy. And now there are esteemed voices ready to make the argument that we, as a society, go cashless, or at least use less cash. A leading US economist suggests that central banks should phase out paper currency. But would it work? Lewis Goddell tries to figure it out.
How many of us would pay for something with 50s? And even if we did, how many shopkeepers would accept them? This is at the heart of Harvard economist Ken Rogoff's thesis that high-denomination banknotes, £50 notes or $50 bills in the US are used for organised crime, tax evasion and even spur illegal immigration. If you see a briefcase of $100 bills, you know where it's from, as any fan of Breaking Bad would tell you.
There's a variety of denominations. How much is enough?
Rogoff believes that abolishing high-value cash notes would allow central banks to stimulate the economy by making negative interest rates work better. At the moment, if negative rates are in place, i.e. banks are charging you to deposit your money, you might as well hold it in cash. By abolishing high-value notes, you remove that option and make people and businesses spend. But from gold coins to the gold standard, money has existed in high-value form since the ancient world. How prepared would people be to give up that right? Ask the Weimar Republic or Harold Wilson, politicians have oft come unstuck messing with our money. In this uncertain financial world, it might take a brave one to ask us to part with it now.
That doesn't mean, of course, that the pound here in Britain, in your pocket or purse or in your bank, has been devalued.
Well, there's a brave one right here. Ken Rogoff joins us now from Boston, and Fran Boyd, the Executive Director of Positive Money, is with me now. Thank you very much for joining us. And Ken Rogoff, how do you actually see this working?
Well, just to be clear, I'm in favor of less cash, not cash less. I think going entirely without cash in the foreseeable future would be a mistake. Privacy, what if there's an electric outage, convenience for small transactions. But if you look around the world at the advanced countries, the Euro, Japan, the United States, they're just swimming in these big bills that most people never see. There was a joke that the 500 euro note was the bin Laden because everyone knew about it, but no one had seen one. 80% of our currency is in cash. It's $3,600 bills for every man, woman, and child, pretty similar in the Eurozone, twice as much almost in Japan. And the central banks do surveys. They say people love our currency, just they hold about a tenth of that.
Right.
And they don't know where it is.
Let me talk to Fran Boyd then. If we are swimming in all this cash we never actually use and most of us never actually see, what's the point?
Well, actually, I mean, in the UK, cash is only 3% of all the money we use, and the remaining is 97% is digital money we use with our debit cards. I think it's a really interesting idea to think about moving towards a less cash society, but I think there's a big part of the debate which isn't being discussed, which is what's that cash replaced with? And the electronic money we use through our debit cards isn't the electronic version of cash. They're actually different because of the institutions that creates them.
And isn't that the point, Ken Rogoff, that suddenly you've got the privatisation of money, that if I have wads of cash, I can keep them under the bed or do whatever I want with it, but as soon as it belongs in a digital structure like a bank or a society, then they can do with that what they want?
Well, first let me say the UK is in a very different position than the United States or Europe. You don't have, we have the $100 bill, Europe has the 500 euro, Switzerland has 1,000 Swiss mark, like $1,000. Singapore has a 10,000 note, $7,000. The UK is in a different position. That said, if you look at actual sales in retail shops, they're not using so much these large notes. But if you look at, when they seize drug, big drug busts and other things, they find them a lot. So we have cash declining in the legal economy, and it's rising in the underground economy. So it's an idea of striking a balance.
And there is this seediness now that is associated with wads of cash. If you open a suitcase and it has cash in it, you don't think, what a wonderful surprise. You think, what on earth has gone on here, right? There is that connotation.
No.
I mean, I'm not denying that there are issues with tax evasion, and definitely thinking about abolishing the bigger notes could go towards that. But I think this really throws up bigger questions in terms of what is money for? How do we design a money system that actually works for people? And I think that if we're going to really worry about tax issues and the seediness of big suitcases full of money, the bigger tax justice issues around corporate tax avoidance.
And to be fair, Ken, you never actually addressed that question.
I don't think they're bigger quantitatively.
What about this question of privatisation? That money is a very public currency, I suppose, want of a better word. As soon as it becomes digital, you lose that.
So I'm not getting rid of smaller notes that most people use. And it's perfectly possible, I discuss it in my book, for the government to provide its own electronic currency at a very subsidized rate. In fact, I propose, and I think in the UK this has been long considered, giving low-income people free debit cards. They do that in the Nordic countries.
What do you make about this idea of personalised digital cash?
I think that we definitely need to think about central banks issuing a digital form of cash, and actually central banks, there's more and more research coming out to say that they want to move in this direction. I think, at the same time, we need to look at the actual system and how it works and the structure that underpins it. And I think that it's not necessarily that simple in order to move to a economy that gets rid of cash and just replaces it with a digital currency completely. But I think I'd agree that we need to move in that direction, and we need to think about money being a public good and how we make it work for society.
Do you think there's ever a danger when you start to play around with money in this way that you destroy the value of it?
I don't think so, but I look at it very carefully in the book. There are all sorts of subtle issues about if you get rid of too many of the notes, can the central bank still control the currency? Because if currency was all electronic, it doesn't really look different than treasury bills, and it starts to get to be confusing what to look at with monetary policy. I want to say this is something that needs to be done slowly. You don't know what's going to happen. I'm looking at 10 to 20 years once you get going. I think it's important to provide financial inclusion, see what problems come along the way.
Last word.
Just to say, negative interest rates, bad idea as well. There are better ways that we can stimulate and boost demand.
OK, we're going to end it there,
I couldn't
guys.
disagree more.
We should carry it on, but we can't. Thank you both very much indeed.